A few months ago, back in the United States, I was given the news that my dog may have a tumor. The other things that were given to me was a $5,000 price tag. Pretty much no options and a whole lot of fear. The thing is, something just didn't feel right to me. So I decided to wait. When I arrived here in Mexico, not only did I get real answers, but what are the chances that that decision saved me thousands of dollars? So hi, my name is Dominique, and welcome back to Morelia. So I know a lot of you may be concerned about taking your pet here to a vet in Mexico. You may be wondering what kind of care you're going to receive and what it's going to cost. Today I'm going to share with you Cassie's journey. I'll let you know what she had done, how much it cost me, and what the overall experience was. So Cassie had a history of having these nasal drips that would come and go. And normally they could be treated with thyme, warm compresses, maybe some antihistamines. But the last one wasn't leaving. It was hanging on and nothing we were doing was helping. But then she started to have nosebleeds, and after a couple of those, and I realized she was showing signs of weight loss, I was concerned and took her to a new vet. The vet did a brief exam and told me she felt like, with Cassie's age, it was probably a nasal tumor. And we were scheduled for rabies shots that day because we needed them updated before we could move to Mexico. They wouldn't give them to her. They did not want to disrupt her system if it was already in stress, which I appreciated. They decided they were going to run some blood work to help confirm her suspicions, as well as find out if there was any organ failure. When the blood work came back, they found out that she was suffering from Morelia. There's a longer name for that. I'll put it up here. But basically, it's a tick-borne disease, and it can cause all of the symptoms that she was having: the nasal drip, the nosebleeds, the weight loss. So they put her on a steroid and antibiotic treatment, and it helped. When we returned for her follow-up appointment, she was doing much better. Nasal drip had completely stopped. Her weight was coming back. And she had developed a lymph node that had swollen to the size of a Super Bowl. Completely gone. They were confident enough to give her her rabies shot, but the vet was still insistent that she probably had a nasal tumor. I wasn't convinced. I wanted to know if there was anything that we could do to find out, to be certain. She told me there was only one way to find out, and that they needed to do more imaging. She said that Cassie would need to go to a specialist to have this imaging done. That she understood I was on a budget, so the one she was recommending was excellent, but a little further out. She also said that they were lower cost than most places. I did a quick Google search. They had good reviews. I agreed to receive the phone call from them. Let's set up an appointment. When the woman called, I was kind of impressed. Less than 24 hours later, she explained that the procedure would require for her to come in and she would stay overnight because she would need to be put under anesthesia. That this was an invasive imaging, an endoscopy, which I guess puts a camera in the nasal cavity. Anyway, I hated to ask this, but that rabies shot had just cost me $150. So I needed to know how much this was going to cost me. He said, yeah. She said, this is going to be expensive, and you do need to take it into consideration as to whether it's something you want to have done or not, especially with your dog being older. She let me know it was going to be about $5,000 just for this. And if they needed to do a removal, the price would go up from there. She also let me know I needed to have $1,500 up front. I was floored. I hated to say it. I hated to think it. I hated hearing the words come out of my mouth. But I had to tell her I was going to have to think about it. Especially when she said she didn't even know if this was going to help. Wow. I took about a week to think it over, weighed out my options. I watched Cassie. She seemed so much better since the Ehrlichia had gone. She was energetic. She didn't seem to really be having any problems breathing. And Mexico was only a few weeks away. So against some very well-meaning advice and very generous offers, I decided to wait. When I arrived here in Mexico, I soon met a couple of ladies that I got a chance to know. I let them know about Cassie's situation and asked them if they had anybody they could recommend. They did. They had a family friend that was a vet. She made one phone call and he showed up less than an hour later. He took a look at her, but he wasn't 100% convinced that it was a tumor either, and asked for her medical records to be sent over. I sent them over that afternoon. Unfortunately, that was the last time I heard from him. I tried to be patient. I knew we weren't the only people that he was looking at, but weeks went by and Cassie seemed to be getting worse again. I started wondering if I'd made the wrong decision. I wanted to ask the ladies if they knew of anybody else that we could go to, but I also was a little bit concerned about crossing cultural borders. I didn't want to be insulting. I didn't want to appear impatient. But in the same way, I was concerned for her. Thankfully, one day, one of the ladies suggested that we go somewhere else. She had had no luck getting a hold of him, did not know what was going on, but she said Cassie couldn't wait any longer, and I agreed. I was relieved. A couple nights later, she shows up and says, "Let's go. If you can, let's go to the vet." I said, "It's 6 o'clock at night. Did you make an appointment?" She said, "No, you don't need one." She said, "They're open until 8. It'll be fine. Let's just take her down there." I honestly almost said no. I thought that was ridiculous. Who shows up at a vet, right? I mean, and if a vet doesn't need an appointment, what kind of vet are they? Probably not a very popular one. But I was open to it. She said it was normal. I said, okay. I was leery, but we headed over there. When I walked in, the office was immaculate, very up to date. There were a couple people sitting and waiting, but everybody was pleasant. Everybody was understanding. My friend was there to translate, but they still addressed me with the conversation, and I appreciated that. I could understand most of what they were saying, but my grammar needs some work, to say the least. But they were patient. They took her back, did an exam, told me they wanted to do some x-rays. I was expecting we would need to come back. Less than 20 minutes later, I had the results of the x-rays. They could see that her nasal cavity wasn't clear, but they couldn't be certain what they were looking at from the x-ray. They could also see that the tip of her nose had slightly bent from the pressure. So they said they definitely required more imaging. It was, as the other vet said, the only way that they were going to be able to know for certain. They explained that we could bring her in the morning, that she would be put under anesthesia. They would do the endoscopy, and she could be brought home that night if everything went well. She didn't need to stay overnight. Okay. For that evening's visit, including the exam, the x-ray, the consultation, the medication that they sent me home with, everything being done in less than 2 hours, cost me 50 US dollars. Yeah, I was shocked. So now for the next step. Here we go. I thought, what is this going to cost me? I knew what they told me it was going to cost me back in the US. What was this going to cost me? The conversion was done and redone because I couldn't believe I was seeing these numbers correctly. $250. It was going to cost me $250 to work with that. So I dropped her off at 9 a.m. and waited. I was anxious. Anesthesia can be dangerous for anybody, but at her age, the risks go up. So I was relieved when I got that phone call at 2 p.m. to tell me that she was fine. She had come through, woken up, and was doing well. We could pick her up that evening. They just wanted to watch her for a few hours. So they also let us know that what they found was a dental infection. Cassie had a severe dental infection that had spread into her nasal cavity. They said they felt like it might have been going on for a while and just missed. They assured me I did nothing wrong, that she was eating fine, hard food, soft food, chewing on chew toys. She wasn't showing any difficulty breathing, so there was really no way for me to know. They felt like the ehrlichia had escalated the symptoms. And they said they felt like it might have been even a blessing in disguise because that's what spurred on the blood test that discovered it. I just kept hearing not a tumor. I just kept hearing my dog didn't have a tumor. And that sense of relief that not only was she going to be okay, but I hadn't majorly screwed up by deciding to wait. We set up the appointment. At this point, there was no question. It wasn't a tumor. My dog wasn't going to possibly get an incurable diagnosis or surgery. So the appointment was for about noon that day because they needed to take her to a separate surgical center. And again, we waited and waited. I think when they called and told me that everything was fine and she was awake, it was probably the first time I breathed all day. They had cleared out the infection, and they ended up having to take out 3 teeth. He would need to stay for post-op care 2 to 3 nights, 3 probably. They would let me know. Being a bit of an overprotective dog mom, I did have my friend call a couple different times. Thankfully, they had no problem using her as a go-between. They would text her, call her, give her updates, no issues whatsoever. So I went to pick her up that night. She looked happy. She didn't appear to be in any sort of discomfort. The people were playing with her, and she just seemed to be enjoying herself. So what did it cost me for that surgery? For those teeth to be removed? for that 3-night, 4-day stay for post-op care, for the medication that they sent me home with, about $450. There was a follow-up appointment. It was around $25. And the grand total for this whole thing was just under $800. What was my experience like? The office was beautiful. The equipment seemed to all be current and up to date. The communication was excellent. And I think what topped it off is when we were leaving, as excited as Cassie was to go home, when one of the ladies bent down to say goodbye to her, she didn't hesitate to run back to her. Not in the least, which tells me she wasn't traumatized having stayed there for 4 days. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I'm not suggesting that everybody cross the border in order to get vet care. But if it's an option, and maybe one of your only options, I would consider it. 1/5 of the price I was quoted just to find out. Less than the deposit that they wanted down. And the best vet care my animals have had. And trust your instincts. They're one of the most important things that we have. But what are the chances that that decision, trusting my gut, would save me thousands of dollars? Turns out they were really good. That also got me thinking about my finances here in Mexico and questions that I get from my family. How am I surviving? They know that I came here with less than $7,000 in the bank. How am I making it work? How am I living here? What are my expenses? I decided after this experience that this information is probably very important for anybody considering coming here to Mexico, and they need to know this sooner rather than later. I did when I was looking to come here. So in my next video, that's what I'm going to be discussing. My monthly rent, my living expenses, my entertainment expenses, how I live, travel, and enjoy myself for less than $1,000 a month. If you got anything out of this video, whether financially or a little bit of assurance about the care that you might receive here, or you just enjoyed the story, I would truly appreciate a thumbs up. Yes, it does help the algorithm, but it will also help me share this information with other people that need it. So thank you for tuning in. And if you want to know about how I'm surviving, how I'm living, how I'm traveling, how I'm enjoying my life here on less than $1,000 a month, maybe hit the subscribe button so you don't forget to tune in for the next video. And what are the chances that I'll see you next time here in Morelia? I hope they're really good. Take care.